Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV World once again. In this show, we bring you different stories from around the world, some things that are important to us in particular. And today's show is mostly about that as well, the issues pertaining to Pakistan, which of course carry huge importance. As the year ends, we would also be taking a review of what this year meant for Pakistan. In our first segment, we will be looking at the very important national security policy that we have discussed earlier in the show as well, and that has been approved by the cabinet today. And this is an extremely important development, of course, since such a policy was quite a significant development and an important one, something that was much needed. However, there are many issues that remain as to what really has been part of the national security policy. All we know at the moment is that the economic security is being spoken about to be at the core of the national security policy. How that was not included in the past, or what changes have been made in terms of bringing it together now, in terms of what forms as human security, will be discussed in detail in the show. And then, of course, the issues of implementation, which are quite important. A lot of the things that we see on paper, we don't see actually happening. So the success of a policy, of course, at the end of the day, would result in whether or not it is actually implemented. So a lot of the issues that pertain to that will be discussed in our show today as well, because, of course, we do not want this national security policy to just be a document with no real value. So for its value, what changes and what actions are required, what sort of sectors need to be engaged, what sort of steps need to be taken, all of that will be discussed in today's show in the first segment. In the second one, we will be reviewing 2021 in terms of the foreign policy challenges that Pakistan has faced, and also the achievements that Pakistan has made in this regard. Of course, the year has been tough. There are a lot of things that we can talk about in terms of what Pakistan has done, both in terms of its own politics, in terms of its own peace and prosperity, and of course as a key regional and international player as well. So a lot of the issues in which Pakistan has participated in will be taken a look at. And then, of course, as we enter another year, we also want to see what remain the key challenges for Pakistan, and how do we proceed forward in terms of tackling them and then moving towards an era of progress and prosperity, not just for our own country, but of course for the region and the world. To discuss all of these issues, we have been joined in the studio by Mr. Farrukh Pitafi and Mr. Faisal. Thank you very much for being with us, gentlemen. And we will also be joined by experts online. For our first segment, we will be joined by Mr. Gohar Masood, who's a journalist. He's going to be on a line with us on telephone, and we will be talking to him regarding the developments of the national security policy. But before that, let's take a look at the kind of issues that we have discussed in the past as well with reference to the national security policy. Faisal, when we've spoken about this policy before, we've discussed at length as to how this was a major requirement in the country, and that this is an important step forward to ensuring that we actually have a direction in terms of going forward. Today it has been approved by the cabinet with reference to what you think may be part of this policy, with special emphasis on economic security. What sort of issues do you think have been highlighted in this, and what is the main areas that are being stressed? Before you answer, let me also welcome in the show Mr. Gohar Masood, a journalist I was earlier introducing in the show, who's joined us on telephone line. Thank you very much, Mr. Gohar, for being with us on the debate.
Sana,
yes, thank you.
Yeah, Sana, thank you very much. Talking about national security policy, first of all, I just want to highlight that it was much needed now, because it's been more than 70 years and we hadn't had a security policy in the country. And of course, I think this is the current government, the step from the current government. It is obviously, a step that was never taken before. We must highlight that. And then, secondly, obviously, looking at the facts, the ground facts, as we know that Pakistan is giving emphasis on the economy. The country's economy is the most important thing right now. And looking at the facts that in recent times, Pakistan has been, emphasizing on CPAK as well. As we know that region is moving towards BRI and CPAK and all of these things, they are an indicator that things are moving on towards the economic partnerships. So Pakistan is placing itself towards that. obviously internal security as well as external security, we can only move on with our economy being good. The economic security of the people is crucial in coming times. But if we look at our neighbor Afghanistan, of course we have a fragile border right now, a fragile western front right now. Pakistan wants to ensure through CPAC, of course, Pakistan wants to link that to Central Asian republics, and that can only happen through Afghanistan. So that's why Pakistan is working on them, so that the stability, the economic stability can be achieved of Afghanistan as well. That we know that if Pakistan is successful in maintaining the economic stability of Afghanistan, that would ultimately mean that Pakistan has control over its internal security as well, internal economic security. Because we know that whenever there is trouble in Afghanistan, then of course there is trouble in Pakistan. The influx of the refugees, it creates chaos when it comes to Pakistan's economy. So these are the key things which are being looked after. Then of course natural resources of Pakistan, that are a point of concern as well. And I think when we will get the the full security policy of Pakistan, these things will be highlighted in that.
Right, and the major aspect that is being stressed upon, of course, is economic security as well. But I want to understand, Mr. Gohar, was this actually missing in previous policies, or whenever we previously talked about human security or national security, was the economic factor not taken into account? Because fundamentally, doesn't human security and national security also entail economic security?
Thank you so much, Sana. I would say that in the previous policies that we have made on the national level, that were mostly focused on terrorism or security issues, but economic things were not present in those policies majorly. But here, I would say that what we have got from the previous policies, from the previous national policies that we had made regarding the national issues. Like I would say that we had met a national action plan in 2000 some years ago, but we are still thinking, and some opposition parties are criticizing this, that we have not followed this very well. Similarly, here today we have a plan, and the government has announced a national policy. But the thing is that who will follow this policy for a long term? If this policy is just for a year or 1.5 years, then that is only the loss of the nation, only the loss of the citizens, because they will spend money and so many things on this policy. But the people, the masses, the citizens, they will not get anything of that. As we have already seen that in the previous governments, we are making policies, we are announcing policies, but in the result, we are getting nothing. Similarly here, I would say, yeah, this is a very good initiative in the sense of economic policy that a government is planning, and they are announcing a policy in the terms of economic, and that will give benefit to the citizens. But the thing is, who will follow this policy is, Muid says in his press, we are working on this policy since many years. So this initiative was taken before this government. But what were the reasons? What were the things that were coming in front of this policy not to be issued earlier? Yes. Again, I would say, in the terms of words, in the term of sayings, yes, this is a very good policy. But the thing is, who will follow this, and how this
Mr.
would
Gohar,
be
Mr. Gohar,
followed?
you keep saying who will follow the policies, but isn't it a matter of who will ensure that this policy is followed?
Exactly. This is the thing. See, now this government has left like 1.5 years or 2 years for their government. After this government, what is the assurance that the other government who will come in the government, they will follow the same policy for the citizens? Because
Sure.
I think we don't have such customs values that the governments are following policies for long terms, because we just made policies and those policies are just only related to the present government. When the other government is coming, they are presenting, they are announcing some new policies. Because of these policies, short-term policies, we are just losing, not getting benefits for the citizens. So
All
here
right.
the thing is,
All right,
here the
Farrukh,
thing-
when we talk about the fact that there are statements coming in that this is going to be an evolving document so that
Right.
it stays relevant and that the changes can be made to it. But with regards to how we've seen in what has been going on in our country in the past, this seems to be something that can go either way. When we have an evolving document, perhaps the kind of essence and spirit that's required in terms of this policy to be followed and for its objectives to be achieved, there is a chance that maybe the changes that are made to such a policy, or that any new regime who comes in makes its own kind of changes, own perspectives and views, especially when they're not taken into account at the moment, isn't that going to be, or possibly can be, problematic?
Right. So how does that work? Does it mean a new government comes and says that Pakistan doesn't need security at all, or Pakistan doesn't need neighbors, or it does need neighbors? I think that there must be variations, and I understand what you're referring to when it comes to nitty-gritty. Remember, before coming to PTV, I've worked with a number of channels and networks. So I remember that in one channel, I was given a functioning title for a program, and then I requested, let us make it national interest. So the first thing my chairman of the channel talks to me about is what national interest? Who's going to define it? In the end, the title they gave me was changed into national interest ? Right? So I had to actually, every time when I introduce a program, I had to say, welcome to national interest. Right? So that is one anecdote that I just wanted to give you. But remember, more or less, things have transpired the way I was telling you day before yesterday, that economy is going to be at the center of everything, right? You were saying that is economics not part of security? I'm going to flip the question, and I'm going to say whether security is not a part of economics, right?
Exactly.
If you remember this adage, an army marches on its stomach. So the purse and ability to actually generate revenue is very important. Now, I get it that it is a policy, and policy is an exact matter, and whosoever, and that's why yesterday when Moeed Yusuf actually came to television, he actually pointed out that the next government will have the capacity to make changes to the document. That goes for the Constitution as well. Constitution of Pakistan is a living document. There are requirements about regarding how to actually pass laws or amend it, but there is a room of movement, right? Similarly, when it comes to policy, in fact, I can see that there was some kerfuffle in the parliament regarding this matter as well. I remember last month there was a briefing, a closed door in-camera briefing by the National Security Advisor on the very matter to the parliament, and most of the lawmakers from opposition actually decided to boycott.
Yeah.
It is their fault, but remember that whenever you are talking about any document or anything, there are three tiers to it. First is a framework. Whether you are going to have the Constitution of Pakistan as the leading or framework, or you are going to actually set some rules. I believe that there were certain rules that were enshrined, right? After that, you have policy, which is an exact matter. And then comes strategy. Every year, you are supposed to generate another document that is going to be the strategy, national security strategy document, like the US actually does, right? So in that context, I was actually going for certain counterfactuals. For example, if we had some kind of security document in 65, say, or in 71, or at the time of Kargil, or at recently whenever we had skirmishes with India, I wonder what it would have entailed for the country. I think it is very important to remember that you have to have a paradigm, a map of how things function. And sadly, that wasn't the case. And that's why I keep on saying, and unfortunately, that is a problem with our media's framing of the issue as well, that they don't understand how important a breakthrough it is. For the first time ever in this country's history, we have all come together, and we have defined the contours of what security is. And surprise, surprise, the entire structure has kept the individual citizen at the center of it. Right? That is great news.
Sure.
And economic prosperity being the center cog of it, I think we should be celebrating right now. Unfortunately, half of the people cannot even understand what NatSec or national security means in this country. So that becomes a problem, otherwise it is a big breakthrough.
Right. Faisal, when we talk about that the opposition earlier also boycotted this, does this still not mean that whenever we talk about policy coming forward in terms of getting involved with all the stakeholders, it is also important that there is a proper debate held on it. Do you think that this will not be discussed in the parliament, or if it is, that the opposition is not going to be included, will not include themselves once again?
Sana, I think they will be included in it. They have to be there for this, because this is not about a party, this is not about a party's sort of manifesto or anything like that. It is, as Farrukh has mentioned, about on the center stage we are looking at a normal Pakistani, a citizen, a Pakistani citizen. I always think, as you will agree with me, and then Farrukh will agree with me as well, we have been seeing throughout our lives, and we know that if anything goes wrong with any citizens of the Western countries, of America, of these sort of countries, wherever they are in the world, their country gives an ownership to them, and their country is always there for them wherever they are. But when it comes to obviously Pakistan, we never had that kind of ownership for Pakistani citizens in other countries. There are so many citizens of Pakistan in other countries who are still waiting for their trials, waiting for else, and waiting for the justice, but they are not given justice. And we keep on highlighting them stories on media as well. But why it happens? Because we don't have that policy which our government is working on it right now. And I think this is the time that opposition needs to look into it, regardless of their considering the government as their political foes. They need to think about the people of Pakistan. Forget about getting credit, who gets credit. I think the whole parliament, along with the government as well as the treasury benches and the opposition benches, both of them, they will be given credit if they come and
right. Mr. Gohar, when we talk about this policy, an important aspect, of course, is that there is synchronization in terms of the different sectors and different institutions who will be involved, and of course all the stakeholders and different groups within Pakistan. Is that sort of a consensus there? Do you think that everybody who needed to be an important part of this discussion was indeed an important part of this discussion?
Sana, I would say, like Mr. Raja Faisal said, that the whole political parties are, the whole Pakistan must come on one point regarding the Pakistani citizens and the benefits to the Pakistani people. Yes, I agree with Mr. Raja Faisal that he's saying that, when we are, our government is making a policy for the whole nation, for the whole country, then it must be adopted by the whole political system, by the whole government system. Similarly, we have been observing the political parties that they are mostly playing a number game or a game that they are getting benefit or they are showing to their followers that we are doing this and the others are not doing this. So here I would say that when the matters come on national issues, the whole political parties must come together. Other than that, we are just, in a circumstances that we cannot get rid of this mess with all these issues. I would say that I would just give a short example that when this government came into being, Imran Khan met the government, then the whole political parties were going in their own opposition with a special name. But till now, they didn't made any decision, any solid decision that they can prove to the people, they can prove to the masses that yes, this government is not good and we are good. We have made this decision for the common people. So they are just playing politics and doing nothing for the people. The same case is in the previous government. Similarly, here again I would come on this point that this government has made a policy, but what are the mayors? I haven't seen any such things that they are announcing that we will follow these mayors and we will make this policy successful. So till that time, we are not coming as a nation on a policy. We are not gathering on an issue. We cannot make it successful. On the other side, definitely, I would say that I would just add a little bit in it.
Sure.
That for economic security, this is very important that we have to have a very strong security system. Because of security system, we cannot make economic security. We cannot make successful economic policies. For economic policies, we need security. We need peace. Because of peace, without peace, without security, we cannot make successful the economic policies.
Right, absolutely. Mr. Gohar, surely the national security policy will also contain a way forward or a strategy in terms of how to deal with extremist groups within the country, with militant groups within the country, and how to engage them as we move forward as well. With regards to what is going on within the country at the moment, how we have been dealing with such groups in the past and at the present moment, do you think that there is a change in that strategy, or do we have something laid out as to how we will be dealing with such groups in the future?
Frankly speaking, Sana, I'm sorry, but for me, it seems like a very confused situation. I would just give a short example. Today, Mr. Farrukh Babar Awan, the Prime Minister advisor, he presented a short note to the Senate that Islamic Ideology Council has made a PAK Pakistan. It's for the whole Pakistan as a security planning, as against the extremism, against the terrorism. But till now, not the Senate, not even the National Assembly adopted this suggestion from the Islamic Ideological Council. So the purpose to tell this is that we are just making policies, we are just announcing the things. I would say here, again, we are making Pehame Pakistan, we are making this national policy, and before this we have made many other policies. But where is the implementation? How we are implementing
that,
all
of course,
these
is
things?
that, of course,
Yeah.
Mr. Gohar Masood, is the most important question. Thank you very much for joining us on the debate and being a part of the show. Before we conclude this session, I also want to stress upon the aspect of economic security that we discussed earlier, Farrukh, with regards to how we will be taking a look at trade relations with different countries. Can we see moving forward a change in the way that we look at our relations with different countries, with our neighbors, perhaps even India, with regards to trade? Can we even begin to have this discussion where we can see any sort of possibility of such relations to exist without getting politics involved?
Right, and that is a million dollar, actually billion dollar question, and I'm going to address that, but I will, ask for your tolerance and your patience, because what you cannot do is let other people talk about nitty-gritty and then ask me about something very different.
Go ahead, Farrukh.
Regarding not that I'm disagreeing with Gohar Masood or for that matter Raja Faisal. The humble submission is not every policy is actually presented to public. Right? For example, there is a thing called nuclear policy, right? All over the world, wherever you have nuclear arsenal, how many countries actually present that to the people's judgment, right? Yesterday we were told that there is a document that is going to remain classified, but it's a version that is public version. Remember, there can be two versions. One version will tell you what are the goals, vision statement or some kind of basic directives. And then the second part is going to be the how to do it or how to go about it. So how to go about it is not going to be made public, right? But the Prime Minister within 7 to 10 days is going to launch a document that is for the public consumption, and it will be presented to the Parliament as well. Again, remember that you can build consensus, but on national security, I believe more or less we have consensus. Now coming back to your question, and I think that today you have to realize where now the onus lies. The one great news is that we got our finance minister back. Now he is a senator and he is back in the cabinet in his own capacity, right? It is very important to remember that the locus of Pakistan's security now is going to be on two shoulders. One, the finance minister, and then the governor state bank. It is very important to remember that these things are going to be of pivotal importance. True. Once you have them and once they are directing everything from growth to frameworks, you can actually flourish further. Now the question about integration with the region, it basically is, it can be called a finance policy or economic policy, but with due respect, that is the commerce policy.
Sure.
Now, the geoeconomics bit is very important, that you want to trade with all the partners, and Pakistan has great potential. Just look at Gawado only. You will not find another better located, deep sea port, and especially at such a position.
True.
But the problem is with the bullies on our eastern front. And there you need a very coherent kind of policy. That's why everything is going to come into it. Remember, national security policy is going to take care of food security as well, water security as well, climate security as well, and it keeps on going. So you need a framework, and then you actually diffuse power and take all the elements together.
Right.
In that situation, I think eventually India will also come round. Afghanistan will also stabilize. And regarding Pakistan, just very humbly, let me point out that National Action Plan, when it came very late, 14 years late, right? And after that, Pakistan, that is the counter narrative against terrorism, came even later. And had we had this national security policy, you could have actually gone and created the consensus on a national action plan. And what happens now when, as you pointed out, the definition of terrorism and circumstances are changing. They have changed. So you need a national action plan 2.0. In that context, this policy is going to be the basic framework that is going to define what to do in the coming days.
And we really hope that this basic framework is actually put to use as well. Faisal, I'll take your comments quickly, but let me also welcome our guest for the second segment in the show. Mr. Asif Durrani, who's a former ambassador, has joined us for our second segment on the debate. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. I'll quickly start with the second segment as soon as Faisal finishes his comments. Yes, Faisal.
Yeah, just a 1 minute comment. What I'm presuming is, in coming days, when we get, a cider of the national security policy, of course, when it comes to economic security policy, I am predicting that as Prime Minister, Imran Khan is someone who has always talked about, since his politics started, talked about an individual Pakistani's economic security and how he should be helped by the government. I think, health card and SARS program, all of these programs, they are being secured, being part of the national security policy as well, economic security when it comes to the individual Pakistanis. And Prime Minister wants to ensure the consistency in that.
Okay,
right, one sentence,
yes,
just
Farrukh.
one sentence. Remember this Prime Minister when he addressed the nation, his inaugural speech addressed to the nation, he actually held up the X-rays of X-ray scans of two kids, right, and one was undernourished and stunted.
Malnutrition.
So that actually means that this government has priorities, right? But with due respect, opposition will have to start working on this as well.
Absolutely. When we talk about the entire year in terms of the foreign policy issues and of course the achievements and the challenges, there is a lot with regards to Pakistan. Mr. Asif, when we look back at this year, what do you think has been the biggest achievement in terms of the foreign policy decisions of Pakistan?
I think there are many achievements, you count them. And foremost being recently had OIC ministerial meeting on humanitarian assistance for Afghanistan. Am I audible?
You are, sir. Please go
You can
ahead.
hear me in my voice how your tech work. So I
Your
was
voice is
saying
breaking
that
up now.
OIC ministerial meeting was the foremost concern. This was perhaps first feather in the cap of the president past years, because no
Right,
other activity of
sorry to cut you, Ambassador Saab, but your voice seems to be saturating. It is coming to us, you're audible, but it breaks from time to time. I don't know whether it is the signal problem or something.
No, I think.
But could
I
you
think if
repeat
we-
the last argument?
sorry.
Could you repeat, sir? Because your voice was breaking earlier.
Yeah, is it okay now?
It's better.
It is.
It is.
What I said that was for this government, the foremost success was the hosting of OIC ministerial meeting on humanitarian assistance for Afghanistan. And probably this was also the first feather in the cap of this government during the past 3 years. Because a multilateral or a forum of this stature and
Mr. Asif, we'll try and connect with you once again, and hopefully this time around we will be able to hear you better. We'll come back and listen to what you have to say with regards to Pakistan's achievements in the year 2021. But let's ask you the same question, Farrukh and Raja. Farrukh, why don't you go first?
Right. So you have actually flipped the entire argument, and you are asking me to actually decide which one was the government's biggest achievement. I think you'll have to understand the importance of 2021. This year starts with something very eerie that was going on in the Western capital, the center of Western democracy or democracy in the world. You saw the attack on the U.S. Capitol, right? That actually implies that that actually is the symbol of this time, what exactly is going on. Then I think the biggest, major event that we saw in our neighborhood was one that actually took place in Afghanistan on India's National Day. Right, 15th of August, when Taliban actually took over in a government that was threatening to fall for 19 years actually collapsed. I think that everything was defined by these two realities. And then remember, the third one is what we have been carrying forward from 2020, that is COVID-19. And Pakistan has its economic problems as well. But I will agree with the ambassador that perhaps the OIC summit was the biggest and most visible accomplishment, not only of government of Pakistan recently, because that actually helped us clearing our name in whatever insinuation and propaganda was going on against Pakistan because of the Indian propagandists, because of umpteen other people who have it for Pakistan, who have been actually against Pakistan. But after that, Pakistan's consultations with the Western countries, especially Troika Plus, before, during, and after the Afghans' transition or whatever happened, that was quite interesting. Remember that when Taliban actually took over, at that time, the American forces were withdrawing. And at that time, I think Pakistan's role actually spoke for itself. When the Afghan Taliban are actually reinforcing the security parameter, right, at the HKI or the airport in Kabul, and there Western diplomats and citizens actually kept on leaving, right? Regarding India and our immediate neighborhood, with the exception of Western border, I think we'll have to still wait because there are too many unknowns, and India's Prime Minister is one of them.
Right. Mr. Asif, I hope this time around we can hear you better. Could you please say something for me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, sir.
You can complete your thoughts, sir.
Well, somehow these are the things which are beyond our control. Well, where were we? Do I have to...
OIC, sir.
OIC and how that is the
OIC,
most important thing.
Yes, that was the, I think, biggest, you can say, achievement of the present government to gather in at such a short notice, because it's hardly 4 months that the new government came in Afghanistan, and then what the Taliban government found out that everything was empty, coffers were empty. Afghanistan's $9.5 billion funds were frozen by the Americans. And you could just the statistics were, quite horrific when you were told that almost 23 million people are below the poverty line, 3 million children are vulnerable to famine, and perhaps 200,000 are likely to die in another couple of months. So in this scenario, if you look at it, so this year, I would say, number one, Afghanistan, there was a big change, and I think Pakistan had a positive contribution. Pakistan had a positive contribution for the evacuation of close to 75,000 foreigners of different nationalities, which Pakistan made a bridge for their safe evacuation. Pakistan also, yeah.
Right, Mr. Asif, more than, and I understand, of course, the OIC and the other factors that you mentioned are, of course, important and significant events in the year 2021 with regards to Pakistan's efforts. But I also want to know whether there is a change or growth in Pakistan's foreign policy decisions in general, and the strategy that Pakistan now employs with its relations with different countries and the international community. Do you think that this year showed you that sort of growth in Pakistan's foreign policy decisions?
Foreign policy does not change every day or every month or every year. You have relationship with the countries, and over the years you have developed those relationships. Yes, at times there are certain setbacks which you have. For instance, with India, you always had the problem, and but this year a positive development took place in February when the line of control became silent, and that agreement is still holding. But unfortunately, it could not go forward. And if you look at it now at Afghanistan, then the big change came there. But at the same time, challenges also came. With China, you have, we call each other as Iron Brothers. That continues. With Iran, in the immediate neighbor, you have stable relationship. Luckily, we don't have any dispute. We may have differences in perceptions, but we are moving forward. Both are on the same page as far as Afghanistan situation and its improvement is concerned.
Right.
With regard
No, I understand that, sir. Of course, I understand about that, about foreign policy. But my question was whether or not we handle things better than perhaps what we have done in the past. And will we do that in the future?
And Ambassador Saab, if I can add to this question, can you tell us about our relationship with great powers at this moment? Because it is important now. People are saying that it is a multipolar world. So go ahead.
It has been a multipolar world since the end of the superpowers monopoly, and especially after the 9/11. And there have been different power circles which were coming up, and now it has taken almost the full circle that now we are talking about renewed Cold War between China and the United States. That is the reality. Second reality is that we had to face this COVID. This also has become a foreign policy challenge for many countries, including for Pakistan. It has had the impact on our economy. So is the impact on elsewhere in the world. So we cannot ignore that as well. Yes, earlier I heard you talking about the national security policy. This is a big achievement because it has all to do and major portion concerns your foreign policy as well. So this is there. Then there's a shift from geopolitics to geoeconomics. This is another positive development which is taking place, although a lot has to be done. It is still in the nascent stages, initial stages, and it has to attain maturity. This takes time. But you have, taken the first step, and hopefully it would be durable further. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Moving forward, Faisal, would you care to point out the key challenges that Pakistan faces?
Well, there are certain challenges, but first I wanted to highlight, I was itching to highlight something. As we won 156-0 from India this year in the World Cup, I think same was the score in foreign policy as well. Why I say this? Because for nearly 20 years, India has been engaging Pakistan on the Western Front from Afghanistan, and Pakistan finally got them out from there. And I think it was a big win for Pakistan and big win for Pakistan's foreign policy as well. If we look at the current situation of Afghanistan, Pakistan is obviously seeing itself on another crossroads, same as we had in the end of the 80s, when we saw that, of course, the turmoil, it shaped itself in Afghanistan at that time. And then later on, of course, we had to go through a phase of terrorism and all in Afghanistan, and civil war took place, and Pakistan was epicenter of all of the refugees and everything which was being bad in there. It was affecting Pakistan as well at that time. But now Pakistan has been very cautious about these things. That's why we saw OIC taking place in Islamabad, and Pakistan is only talking about people of Afghanistan. Pakistan has successfully highlighted the miseries that are being faced by people of Afghanistan throughout the world, so that the world can assess that, and world can help them. Because if people of Afghanistan are not helped, then once again we would see people of Afghanistan and Afghanistan back in the early 90s, and where we would see a civil war taking place. And Pakistan is just ensuring that Pakistan's Western Front is not fragile anymore, and Pakistan wants to do every possible to make Afghanistan a stable economic.
Can I ask Faisal
Sure.
one simple question? He said that Pakistan has very successfully evicted India from Afghanistan. Could you elaborate on that?
Well,
whatever is happening in Afghanistan is not our doing, it is circumstantial, and things actually fell apart. So, why would you say that it is Pakistan's doing?
well, Pakistan has always said that Pakistan is facing terrorism from the Western Front only because of one country, one spoiler, and that spoiler was, of course, India. And if we talk about the peace deal, of course, Pakistan, this current government, it deserves all of the praise for this, because they were behind all of this peace deal. And I think the way Pakistan got Americans and Afghan Taliban on the table in Doha, it was it must be appreciated,
Right,
because
right.
this is the only, and that's how I say that Pakistan was behind the peace in Afghanistan.
basically
and
referring to Pakistan's efforts with regards
that
to
peace
peace in
has
Afghanistan.
actually resulted in
Yes.
India getting out of that.
Mr. Asif, my last question to you would be with regards to looking at the future and Pakistan's decisions and challenges. What things do you think Pakistan needs to be wary of or be cautious about when it steps into the year 2022?
We have to be cautious about our economy, and we have to take corrective measures to improve our economy, because you cannot have successful diplomacy without sound economy. And secondly, let me also tell this gentleman friend who was euphoric about ouster of India, let's not jump the guns, please. India may be down, but it's not out. And secondly, how much we have incurred, how much losses? 80,000 Pakistanis have lost their lives. And India has a substantial contribution into that. In opportunity costs, we have lost $150 billion. And India has a substantive cost to that. And for India, it was quite the cheapest option to keep the western borders hot. So while we should draw some solace, we have to be watchful, where we have to be vigilant. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Asif Durrani, for being a part of the show. It was great talking to you with regards to the challenges and the achievements, of course, that Pakistan has faced within 2021. And then, of course, looking ahead, what seems to be the most important thing. And I think the government seems to be moving on to the right track with its emphasis on economy as well. And that seems to be at the core of the national security policy as well. So hopefully we will be seeing the steps in the right direction and changes made, which are important, both within Pakistan and of course our decisions as a key player in the world as well. Looking forward to whatever future comes in, as with the right direction, with the right emphasis on the right things, we should be able to achieve the objectives that we've laid out for us. That is, of course, the hope. Thank you so much for watching.